All right, and just as you've seen there, it's all about the Africa Cup of Nations. AFCON is Iko KBC, that is the hashtag, my oh my. AFCON Iko KBC. That is the hashtag we are using this morning on, as a station. If at all you want to have, the opportunity to watch this live broadcast all the way from Egypt, remember it's less than 2 days, less than 24 hours to the African Cup of Nations. You can be able to do that right here on KBC Channel 1. We have, we are the official broadcasting station, and you can be able to, enjoy it with your friends over, as a chat concerning which teams you support. Remember, our very own Harambee Stars already, landed in Egypt, and we expect much. Harambee Stars, oye, oye. The hashtag, AFCON, Iko KBC. But meanwhile, this morning, just in time for the next interview, it's all about the future of work. I am joined in studio by Honorable Michael Onyango, who is next to me. He is a champion for emerging technologies and member of Distributed Ledgers and Artificial Intelligence Task Force in the Ministry of ICT. Karibu sana.
Thank you, Ram. Great to be here in KBC.
Yeah, and to my extreme left, Philip Thigo. He is the Director for Africa for the Thunderbird School of Global Management and the Technical Advisor of Data and Innovation in the, at the Executive Office of the Deputy President. He also is a member of the World Economic Forum Global Councils on Food Systems Innovation, and also recognized as one of the world's 100 most influential persons in digital government in 2018. Karibu sana.
Asante sana, Ram. Thank you
It's
so
all
much.
about emerging, the future of works here, as we discuss about the fourth industrial revolution and how emerging technologies have, affected our lives as, Kenyans and also as Africans. Remember, we all are asking the question, do you think that we are capturing the opportunities that are there in terms of technologies and that are present? And how are we involved, in the global perspective? The hashtag is Good Morning Kenya on Twitter, at KBC Television, at Jane Wambui. Tag me also at Ram Aguko. The hashtag Good Morning Kenya. You can tag them. You have a Twitter handle?
Yes, I do. So my Twitter handle is at Mick Onyango. That's M-I-C, Onyango.
All right.
Yes.
Yes.
My hashtag, my handle is at Thigo, P-T-H-I-G-O.
Right. Hashtag Good Morning Kenya. But first things first, let's define for the benefit of the viewer, what is the fourth industrial revolution?
Well, okay, so thank you very much. And, I want to try and be as non-technical as possible. So just to bring it home to everybody who's currently watching this program, and I believe that most of you are currently do a lot of things on your devices being your smartphone. So already you find that you're able to access services, products, just by sitting where you are. Some of you, for example, may be watching this off your screens, off your phone. And that just shows what has happened in terms of how technology has disrupted how we engage, in terms of how we do our work, in terms of how we consume information, in terms of how it is that, for example, and I think one of the best examples for Kenya to understand just what the future of works is M-Pesa.
Nice.
You no longer walk to a bank to withdraw money. You no longer have to send money to either your mother or to pay your bill by physically going to a location.
And your part in terms of defining what the fourth industrial revolution could be in your own way.
I think in my context is that it's first of all to understand the first revolution, of course, was the steam engine. The second one, of course, was around how society advanced around sciences. The third was a semblance of an emerging of digital technologies, but then it was still, automation and a lot of those things that happened. But I think the fourth industrial revolution, as Michael quite put it, by his classic definition, is the fusion of a lot of these technologies. Your phone now is both a camera, you can both type, you can print, you can text. So basically, we're seeing a fusion of all these technologies, but also a rapid advancement of how these technologies are evolving.
Nice, nice. And the question now is, are we ready You know, are we ready for it? Remember, you've mentioned now that we have the first, the second, and the third revolution that have happened. It happened, and seemingly it passed Africa. We were not anywhere involved. It took place, and Africa we missed it. Look, engine has always been there, right? And seemingly, as a continent in Africa, we have never had, you know, the opportunity, just like other countries outside there. We have never, you know, made cars here in the continent. Look at telecommunications. It's a good thing you mentioned there, M-Pesa. We have managed to exploit better, you know, in terms of telecommunications. We now have M-Pesa. We've done well, and thanks to, you know, the people who are involved. But now, how shall Africa, you know, as a continent, where, as a fact, we have, you know, joblessness, and it's a huge problem, particularly among the youth. You know, we are reacting to this. Are we ready for it, regardless of the issues that have been happening?
So great, and that's a very good question. And I want to talk about Africa, and I want to bring it down into Kenya. And first of all, I think we need to be cognizant of the fact that the whole world has been disrupted. And it is interesting. We are actually ready in many ways. And let me speak specifically about this country, Kenya. And I want to speak to the young people who are actually watching this program right now, so that they can really understand who they are and why it is that they must be involved in the future of work. So as a country, first and foremost, you know, and I'll just say this unashamedly, you know, some of the big global corporations, and like, for example, I started Samsung. Anybody who's using a Samsung device, I kid you not, if you actually do an audit trail on some of the innovations that you actually love on your Samsung device, I don't care where you're in the world, you'll probably find that there's a Kenyan at the back end. I know you're looking at me like, am I mad? Yes, but let me tell you this. Yes. So let me ground this. So Samsung's R&D, research and development for Africa, sits in this country. At the same time, IBM Research Lab has only got 3 research labs in the whole world.
But where are we getting it wrong? Because seemingly, as a continent, we are not being seen.
No, the thing is that actually we do not know who we are.
Okay.
That's where our challenge is. So for example, and let me just continue. So IBM has got 3 research labs in the world, only 1 in a developing nation, and that sits here in Kenya. Microsoft, only about 4 weeks ago, has decided to open a whole innovation lab here in Nairobi. So the big question is this: the key ingredient or the key resource for all these tech companies is human capital.
All right.
So we do have it. So the rest of the world has recognized that, but we, as a country and as a people, have not woken up to that reality. So everybody else is coming here and using that resource from our young people, but we're not purposefully looking and seeing and creating an environment so that we can also benefit.
They're telling, in fact, they're taking advantage of what we have, yet we do not see it happening.
Exactly.
So benefit from it.
Exactly. So if you look at what defines the 4th Industrial Revolution, right, and I'll break it into 5, then probably by my explaining, you can ask, are we ready or not? And I think for me, the point is that, do we have to be ready? So the first thing, of course, is globalization, which is more or less the whole definition of the 4th Industrial Revolution. The world is flat. It means anybody can come to Kenya to work, or Kenyans can go abroad to work, or by that sense, Africa. And guess what? We don't have to go physically. What technology has done is that you can work in Estonia from Kenya. And that's what this revolution has defined around mobility, right? You do not necessarily have to commute to work. I can work online. And we know this already is happening in this country, where there's a platform called Upwork that already has 40,000 Kenyans already doing consultancies and freelance work for companies and individuals across the world. The third bit, of course, is new behaviors. And for those who know KOT, right? So Kenyans are on Twitter and Kenyans are online, right? So we are seeing new behaviors, public life. The private is blurring with with the personal. We are seeing a lot of young people making money out of Instagram, out of blogging.
Kenyans are very creative. We pick simple things that happen, even within the political arena anywhere, and then we create something that is humorous, that brings laughter.
Exactly.
We cannot harness it to bring, money.
We actually are, to the extent, and that is what I think Michael is saying, right? To what extent are we leveraging on these capabilities that we already have? Because inherently, if you look at the other bigger, what we say, value around globalization of the fourth industrial revolution is demographics, is the age factor, right? So Kenya is one of the youngest countries in the world. Our median age is 19.1. Europe is aging, if you look at their median ages. Africa in general is about 24 years old. And so basically, as Michael is saying, we have all the ingredients. So what is it that we are not seeing that other people are seeing and are leveraging out of? You mentioned the other revolutions, right? All the three revolutions, all the raw materials came from Africa, right? Whether it's iron, whether it's gold, whether it's minerals. Everything came from here. Guess what? The fourth industrial revolution is about human capital. Where's the raw material? In Africa.
But now, how can we as, Africans, or as a country in Kenya, move up the value chain so that we can become the providers of these technologies to the rest of the world? Look at Japan. Japan is, they are doing with, look at what they're doing with cars. Look at India, the same with pharmaceuticals and software. Why can't Kenya become the leader of, if, for example, artificial intelligence?
Well, great. So one of the things that I think we need to probably recognize is that the challenge that we have is actually a challenge that's across the globe. Everybody's trying to move into the space, and now specifically when you talk about artificial intelligence. So let me tell you for free that there is actually no really one country or one geographical location in the world that actually has it sorted out. And it's interesting, for example, one of the best artificial intelligence innovators is a young man called Babusi Nyoni, who's actually a Zimbabwean. We had him here about 2 weeks ago. Yes, and we took him across this country to 6 different locations. I met up with him about 3 months ago at Oxford University and asked him if he could come here so that he could speak to our young people, and especially our forgotten bottom millions. This is people in the rural areas, so that people can learn that, you do not need more than a high school education to be able to get into the fourth industrial revolution of the future of work.
What does it have to prove that we don't need more
great.
than
So for example, like Babusi himself, he's 31 years old, went to school in Bulawayo. Bulawayo literally, actually, all our towns of this Eldoret, Kisumu, Mombasa are far bigger than Bulawayo. He went to a simple, ordinary school. In fact, when he spoke about himself, he said how, he basically carried ugali and tea, every single day to go to school. But the young man, now, he's made the first commentator for UEFA. Those are one of the innovations that he has come up with, amongst other things that he's doing around mitigating the issues of drought in the world and in Africa based on artificial intelligence, and this is things that he has picked up through self-learning. So it is interesting.
Without going to school.
Without going to school. So one of the things that we're doing, and I'm very grateful for this. So together, for example, with Thunderbird, where Philip works, is that we've come up with a co-creation space that we're calling majadiliano.com, and within this space we're bringing in both different sectors of people, both from government and private sector, to ensure that we can stimulate and we can ensure that where the jobs are needed, that is, within the rural areas. And, and let me put it this way, for example, ICTA's done a very good job. ICTA is the ICT authority. Did you know that we've actually got 9,000 kilometers of fiber rolled out in this country? But who's connecting to it? So now we want to start.
We don't have internet.
No.
To talk to some level, yes. We need to some regions. Look at.
You'll be no. So all 47 counties, every single 47, all 47 counties are connected to internet, and this is fiber.
I think for me is what do we do with it?
Yes, right? What do we do with it? Yes.
And what Michael, I think, is alluding to, and if you think about it, and this is what the fourth industrial revolution has done, right? Babusi, as much as he has a high school certificate, he has adapted to this revolution simply by understanding that in this revolution, it's about how you acquire knowledge, how fast you acquire it, how quickly you adapt, how quickly you apply it.
And it's interesting, someone who has never gone to school can be able to get this.
But remember, he has the basics.
The basics.
He has the basics of
foundation.
Of the foundation of understanding knowledge. And this is what this revolution is challenging the education system, for example. So how do you quickly skill, reskill, and upskill so that you quickly adapt? Let's be honest. 2 years ago, technologies we used to do, we used are obsolete. We don't even know the technologies that will be here in the next 2 years. So the point then is that how do you quickly skill, reskill, and upskill so that you can adapt
Because
to these
they
technologies?
change day by
They
day.
change rapidly. So if you're going to take 4 years, for example, just to earn a degree, that degree may have changed in the course of your studying it. Right? And that's the challenge with this revolution. So it's, as Mike was saying, Babusi, and this is what we learned from him, it's a mindset issue.
Can we move up the value chain?
That's a mindset, right? So my issue is the mindset. Moving up the value chain means we need to retweak how we think. How we think around consumption of education, how we think around jobs versus skills, how we think career versus skills. It's going to be a skilling feature. The skills that you have, he has skills in coding. He has skills in adapting applications into other purposes that are not necessarily used for it. He repurposed a dance app to detect a medical condition.
Yes.
He's not a doctor.
Wow. That's up.
Exactly.
Yes.
And he's not a doctor. So the point is that, think about it, he's simply been able to position himself. And guess what? He works in the Netherlands. So it tells you how young man, no high school education, no background in technology, no opportunity, no privilege, all of a sudden, by simply tweaking his mindset and being able to access knowledge that is online.
And works in the Netherlands as an expatriate.
So it simply tells you that Kenya has everything.
I think it puts to question what Kenya has and how we can be able to harness that. Do we really, maximize on our potential? Let's look at, Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, virtual reality, and augmented reality. They have been, hot topics for both businesses and government for some time now. What are the steps needed for us to, capitalize on the advantages of, innovative technologies? Here we talk about in the workspace. We talk about, the workforce and enforcing the work culture.
So first of all, as Philip has just alluded to, so it's getting the right skill sets. So, we must relook at our education and what it is that we're actually skilling our people with. But the great thing, but that is no excuse to anybody who's actually watching this program, because if you're connected to the internet, there is so much in terms of self-learning that you can do. So I'm going to say a really huge secret to Kenyans here.
And we keep it to ourselves.
Keep it to yourselves. So as a Kenyan,
On national TV, really.
national TV, but please keep this to yourself. I will give you a secret of, if you want to go and get information and you want to self-learn, go to something called google.com. So don't tell anybody else. And from YouTube, there isn't anything you're not able to learn. So there's no excuse, no matter where you are. If you're connected to internet, there isn't anything that you can't be.
Some say they lack, they don't know. And I heard someone say, if you don't know in this age and era,
Yes.
the problem is with you.
And the point of Michael, for example, and to connect Google and your AI question, the minute you go into a browser right now, right, and start to even type something on Google, you see the options you start to get. It kind of is trying to lead you to find something. That's artificial intelligence, right? Because it's already using a history of how people search things, look for things. And for the person who doesn't know, all you need to do today is type Aguko, right? And by the time you do that, or KBC, you start seeing leading questions around it. That's AI. And that's how AI is influencing our lives. Simply using browser history and how other people are searching or looking for knowledge, it starts to suggest. So the don't know bit, it's a little bit lazy.
It's lazy. Huh?
It's lazy.
And let me just add on to that. So one of the things that I'll tell you, every Kenyan watching this, and let me tell you something that your MPs may have not told you about. Each MP has got money to put up 4 community hubs that are connected with internet within your constituency.
Repeat that again.
Each MP in this country, every single constituency, each MP was given money to put up 4 innovation centers for you to be able to have connection to internet. So go back and hound your MP. If you're sitting at home, you've got no work, that where are our 4 centers so that we can also connect to the future of work and we can start getting involved in the global economy.
Are we really taking advantage of this innovative technology?
See, the challenge that, the same challenge that Michael is putting out, and this is basically whether you are a leader or whether you are a consumer of services, the world will not wait. I mentioned the globalization bit of it. The same opportunities you see or don't see, somebody else somewhere, because of this economy, or the gig economy as I would call it, is already seeing that opportunity. And Kenya is one of those hotbeds of these opportunities. That's why we see a lot of expatriates, a lot of these big Fortune 500 companies, by the way, and this is what we were discussing with Michael, is that 11 to 12 years ago, the most valued companies were either oil or pharmaceuticals.
Yeah.
To date, the top 5, Apple, Amazon, Microsoft,
Facebook,
Google, Facebook, are what? Tech companies, 0 assets.
Yeah.
New businesses that Uber came to Kenya in 2015, Uber doesn't own a single car. They just have a platform.
Yeah.
Uber didn't have to open an office, build an office,
Yes.
inaugurate an office, which would have taken like 10 to 15 years. They simply plugged it. It's a platform, leverage on a platform that was already there that was called SAP, and rolled out. So what stops Kenyans from doing the same?
where are we getting it wrong here? We have M-Pesa.
Yes.
And M-Pesa seemingly, it has amazed most people from the Western side. Journalists come, they come do research, and it is a new story to them.
So it's interesting you say that, and I guess about 5 months ago there was a very controversial, message that was going around on social media that had about 21 companies in this country, which are actually tech companies, and it's interesting who the owners were, and most of them are actually non-Kenyans from here. But interesting enough, these 21 companies are actually from outside. From most of them were actually from the U.S. But funny enough is that they've all come to be based in Kenya. But why didn't you ask yourself, why are these companies opening up these offices in the U.S. and why are they opening up here? Again, I'll say our human capital and our human resource is so great, and as Kenyans, we need to understand and discover that. But the great thing is that, for example, I must give credit to what the government is doing. C.S. Musheru, for example, put together the task force, which I sit on distributed ledgers and artificial intelligence, the first task force on the continent to look at one of these 2 emerging technologies so as to inform us as a country and also as the public sector on what it is that we can and we must do towards using emerging technologies to leapfrog us into the next age of creating the new opportunities and the new jobs, but also creating efficiencies within the public sector and the private sector. But let me come to a country which I really love to talk about a lot, and it's called Estonia. Estonia's only got 1.3 million people. But last year, Estonia increased 26% of the new jobs that were created in Estonia actually came from the startup section, the startups in Estonia. The startups in Estonia are actually responsible for more than 40% of the GDP of the country. So that tells you what human capital, human resource can and must do. And that is our biggest asset as a country, young people with new thinking, innovative, and we must just now purposefully, as people, from government, from private sector, come together and see that what is it that we are doing purposefully to ensure that we're creating environments, we're creating places, we're creating institutions that will nurture and ensure that we're competing head to head with the Apples, with the Samsungs, and with the IBMs. Because we're actually resourcing them. The ideas that they're coming up with, which they end up patenting, actually are from our human capital that is here.
And it's quite sad. Look at this. Research shows 17% of students who pursue degrees in science technology, 17% are in Kenya are women. 17. And here we talk about, the question is whether we are investing in human capital. Women in Kenya, we have over 50%, yet 17% do degrees in science and technology subjects within the country.
This is a problem. This is, I think, a historical problem. And the problem, if you look at it, is really the context is patriarchy, right? The patriarchy simply has simply marginalized women and across opportunity. When it comes to science, and for me, it's especially important in this age where science becomes the base of jobs and opportunity, that we purposefully, as Michael says, start investing in women. We've had discussion around, and it's becoming a buzzword, right? STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. It keeps on morphing into science, technology, engineering, math, and design. Whatever jargon we use, the sense must be beyond affirmative action. We must think about is how do we equalize women's participation and engagement in sciences? Because traditionally, people thought science is for men because the direct path of science would be engineering and manual jobs. Guess what? The fourth industrial revolution, nobody's heavy lifting. There's no job that requires you now to have muscles. I think technology has simply equalized that.
But regardless of that fact here, there is something that's happening on the ground. Women are not coming up the way they ought to. Based on these statistics, are they? 17%.
He actually has a good case study that you must listen to about barefoot, right?
Yeah.
So you really need to mention
interesting.
That.
So
you barefoot?
Yes.
So great. So okay. Thank you.
And please mention the age.
Okay. So a couple of years back, when I wore a different hat and I worked then for the county government of Kisumu, we had a program called the Barefoot Digital program, where we were actually ensuring that we could bring people who had only reached class 8 into understanding and bring them into the place of work. So one of the things that we purposefully did is that we ensured that at least 50% of the people that we took into our program were actually girls who had only gone till class 8 but had never made it beyond that. In fact, I'll never forget this. It was interesting how, and then one of the other things we also did is that we ensured that to come into our program you had to be 21 years and above. And why was that so? Because by the time you came into our program, you had been abused so much by everybody in the village that by the time you came and you sat in, you were so geared towards learning the coding skills that we were teaching. And I remember this, and I'll never forget, there's a girl that came in with a baby, and she had just given birth a week ago. She was that desperate to learn new skills. And, so contrary to popular belief, we did teach over 700 standard 8 leavers who had never completed Form 4.
Or seen a computer before.
And had never seen a computer before, and we taught them how to write code and how to code. Sadly enough, because at that time, within the various the various wards where they came from, they didn't continue having access to computers. A lot of the skills, faded away and wade away and collapsed.
That was what I was actually asking a while back. Whether internet is there, is it spread around the country?
I think it's about scale, right? And I think for me, so we must think scale and access, really. Can we scale it? Because right now, let's be honest, the brightest minds, and I can mention them, there's a young man who invented the glove, hired by Intel, works in Germany right now. So the point is that all these flashes of brilliance must be replicated. We need it at sufficient scale, which means the question you asked, one is infrastructure, and I think Michael has mentioned it. There's already a purposeful investment in infrastructure at the counties. So it's us to hold the people to account to provide that infrastructure. The second bit is how do you scale skills, right? So we've talked about YouTube. Schools like Thunderbird are trying to educate the masses, but also to create content that even targets women. So we have a program called Dream Builder that enables women to access skills around business. It's a little bit not traditional because what you need, for example, for women is to quickly learn entrepreneurial and business skills that are tied to this revolution. Don't start from English, not the traditional way of coursework. They need skills quickly to go to jobs. You talked about investments, TVETs. We're seeing now the biggest investment in TVETs. My true sense really is that could be the place where we can really attack this revolution at scale. Because in TVETs, quickly you skill, reskill, upskill very quickly and get out of work. The other bit, of course, is employers have to change their mindset. right? Companies like Google right now, I think, and Microsoft do not require to have a degree.
Yes, that is
Babusi will not have a job if the first thing somebody will have looked at was whether he has a degree or not.
A degree and 7 years of working experience.
And it's interesting that they mentioned Google and Babusi because on the last day that he was here with us, he got an invite from Google, from the headquarters, and he's going to be speaking to them on how to use their technology, which they have created. So some interesting insight, but then also it's interesting. So they are, and then I want to repeat this, Nairobi is not Kenya and Kenya is not Nairobi. Okay. And there's great things that are happening out of Nairobi, which people need to be cognizant of. There is Swahili Port in Mombasa, which is doing great things, and they work around a lot of women. There's also Kakamega County that has something called the Kakamega Hub. So I think there's lots of things that are happening around and out of Nairobi, and the real innovation and the real new unicorns and the great companies that are going to disrupt and become the next and even the bigger M-Pesas will not happen from Nairobi. So those of you who are not in Nairobi, be thankful and be grateful. Don't rush to come into Nairobi. Instead, ensure that your counties, ensure that your members of parliament give you access to affordable internet connectivity. And then when you get online, be clear about what it is that you're doing online, because there is so much that you can do that can be of value to you, and there's so much that you can do that can also just take your time and not get you anywhere.
Were you able to do, you mentioned the 700,000?
700. First we did 700, and then later on we did another 4,000 people. That
700,
we
actually,
then 4,000 people, yes.
But they were not able to access facilities?
No. What we did was this, is that. So now with the next 4,000 people, what we did is this, that we got very practical, and we said, we realized that because people didn't have access to internet, so we said, okay, so we taught people on what they could do with a simple phone. Without even access to the internet. So one of the things that Philip and I are very passionate about is creating things that actually work for us, not taking things that are not context. Yes. So we're very clear about working around initiatives and creating products, services, and skills that actually work around the challenges that are within our environment. So what we did with the 4,000 people is we taught them what they could do with their phones that were non-smartphones. And everybody who left after a one-day training went home being a better person in terms of being able to use their phone to improve their lives, or to being able to earn income, or being able to know that, for example, there is an app that works on SMS on health. And if I need to understand things about health, there's actually a free service, and I can do it using an SMS text.
And there is this problem that is coming up really strongly here, bridging the gap, when it comes to innovative technology between the rural areas and the urban areas. Are we able to bridge this gap?
I think for me it's more very context specific, and I think Michael's point saying Nairobi is not rural and rural is not Nairobi, I think for me this revolution, and that's one of the essence of it, is co-creation and co-working.
Okay.
It means that the people in the rural areas, let me take, for example, agriculture, right? If you have, for example, an innovator who's built an app around supporting farmers, you then need to work with somebody in Nairobi who can still link into that app to link those farmers to markets. Because the person in Nairobi has more context, more information around how markets work in Nairobi. The other innovator who's in Nakuru, for instance, has more context on how farmers work and the kind of produce, the productivity, all that. I think for me then it calls into question of how we co-work and how we co-create. And that's also a mindset issue here, because we think competition. We shouldn't think competition in this revolution. Because when I mentioned Uber has not built new technology.
Because when you want to start a business, you think about who are my competitors, so how can I beat them?
How can I build everything from scratch, right?
What is my niche?
Exactly. So Uber's map is OpenStreetMaps from somebody else. The core engine is SAP, which is a big ERP platform. So they haven't built. They're collaborating.
But we need to. But someone needs to find that market niche so that they can be able to get this thing right.
But that's innovation, right? And when we're talking to, Professor Ndemos says this very well. He says that Kenya should thank God that we have enough problems, because because problems are the engine of innovation. Any of those innovations we've mentioned are solving a problem, and this is this particular economy. If you can Uber is solving how we simply engage around mobility. Google is solving how we look for information. So that's the mindset we are talking about, is how do we get into a problem-solving mindset.
Now, you mentioned agriculture. You know, given that agriculture is very important, you know, in this country, how are we able to, you know, specifically, you know, use technology in this space to, you know, optimize food production?
You see how we smile, right? So this is data you can take to the bank. 25% of all agriculture apps and innovations in Africa are from Kenya. 25%.
25.
In the entire continent. It basically tells you something, right? So Kenyans are already thinking of how they can solve food security. And in our case, we're thinking about food and nutrition security, but also food systems in the entire value chain, from farm to fork. And so there are already innovations and applications that are being utilized there. The challenge has been, one, scale, two, funding, right? Because if you think about how our financial institutions think, right? Think of if nobody invested in Facebook. What is Facebook? It's not a building. It's an app. It's a platform online.
No one bought land.
Nobody bought land. No, or you didn't peg your KPIs on a building coming up and walking into a physical space. Even how we finance our innovations need to change. A lot of our innovations that are being funded here are foreign funded. And a lot of them are donations from foundations. That can't scale. We need serious money. As the same way you'd invest in a company, is the same way we need to start thinking about investing in innovations, because this is the future. The five I've mentioned, from Facebook to, think about it, Facebook, Google, Amazon, I mean, they thought of physical presences later. All this started from what? A garage.
How would you make of this? According to the World Economic Forum, that 52% of work activities in Kenya are susceptible to automation.
Yes, as long as any work is repetitive, it will be automated, right? So think of a bank teller. Today, if you go to an ATM will take your money, dispense cash, it will change your PIN. Think about that. 10 years ago, you had somebody doing this. Accounting is the same. It's repetitive. It's ledgers, it's balancing books. That can be changed. Guess what? Even medicine. Michael has mentioned IBM. IBM has something called IBM Watson. IBM Watson is an AI engine that has ingested over 100 years of medical prescriptions and diagnosis. By a click of a button, by simply asking you as a patient, do you have a headache? Yes. Where did you travel? Just by putting those variables, guess what? The AI engine has already crunched the possible ailments that you have. And simply by asking more questions, eliminated to a perfection of 98%.
You know, Kenya has potential. We are working to driverless vehicles, you know. We are changing how movement is from one place to the other. And there's the possibility of using technology to ensure that we improve the experience, you know, employee experience and retention. Is it possible for us to use technology to improve employee experience and retention? We are now building a borderless work culture.
So already, you know, it's interesting. So a lot of yesterday I was at a different discussion talking about the future of work again, and one of the people that I was with is he's a Nigerian, and I was speaking about traffic in Lagos, and he said, no, what I normally do is that I actually work from home, and I only go into, you know, I leave for the office when the traffic has gone down. So what work looks like has already changed. So I think we need to get into our minds that work means that, you know, you wake up in the morning, you put up a suit and tie, and you go, you know, and you leave, and you physically move from one place to the other. That does not work anymore. I mean, you know, work has totally been redefined and has changed. And to parents watching this, a lot of parents have got their children who are at home and are working online, and they're wondering that, you know, you're not doing anything, and they're worried, they're anxious, they think that, you know, the children are mad. You know,
because they're not getting out of the house.
They're not getting out of the house, yes.
Putting on that suit and the tie.
No, it's not 8 to 5.
It's not 8 to 5.
There's no office.
And there's no monthly salary that comes in.
And there's no monthly salary.
So to parents watching this, I think engage a little bit more with your children. Maybe your children, please engage a bit more with your parents and explain to them. Because I think there's also a problem that you're not explaining to your parents
that I'm actually earning,
living, and spend a bit of time so that you can walk them through the process, so they can know that that what you're doing is actually work and you're actually earning an income. And
not just the parents alone. Yeah.
Yes.
The children need to reach out.
Yes, they do. They must reach out.
And guess what? Even the parents are being disrupted. The parents are being disrupted because the parents are still the bank tellers, the accountants, the people who had the career. When I grow up, I want to be this, right?
They're the ones who put on the suit.
Exactly.
8 to 5.
Yes. So the kids need to tell them that these innovations are coming. And you said about experience and improving the experience of work. My appeal really to employers is that you have these strategic plans that are already envisioning these disruptions. The case is that you need to tell your employees that these disruptions are coming. What we're seeing in terms of experience is that employees are not being informed. And so these disruptions are displacing workers. You'd rather give workers options of saying, listen, do you want to learn this new skill? If you don't want to learn this new skill, because even if you put up an AI engine to run a service, it needs a human being. It still needs somebody. Only that we have now what we call exponential organizations, right? It means that we're having less people and more automation. But the less people still means they're people.
Exactly. So here we are now talking about numbers now.
Yes.
Yeah, because now that the workplace is no longer within the confinements of a room.
Yes.
We are looking into now, does it affect in terms of employment? If a company was working with 100 people, now that it has gone online, what are the numbers that you are looking at? Do we expect increase in the number of employees or a reduction now that it's no longer the physical room that people just check in and check out?
For existing organizations, we are seeing a reduction, right?
Meaning loss of jobs?
Meaning loss of jobs, but it doesn't have to be that way, and that's what I was saying, right? Because people have plans. This is the fourth revolution. Each revolution, you lose jobs, but it creates more jobs. So ideally, is for us to understand what are these new jobs and opportunities that we need to prepare for.
So we need to lose for us to gain.
We will lose anyway, right? But we need to create more jobs. But that's the truth, right? A lot of these big companies you're seeing are being run by 10 people, 15 people, right? So it's not because technology has not necessarily automated, it's better at predicting, it's better at learning. When you hear machine learning, right, they learn.
And then it's interesting, and I'll use a practical example. So I normally hear people advocating that, we want to have X company come and set up, this industry in our town or in our county. And I laugh because when that X industry comes to your town or to your county, it is so automated that there's actually no jobs that are coming to you.
It's simply how do we look at jobs?
Yes, so I would rather that you actually lobbied, for companies that are actually, making moves within what we're now calling emerging technologies, and ensuring that your county or your towns has the right skill sets, and you're skilling your people to have these skills, so that then you're more attractive to these game changers as opposed to the traditional companies. I'll just
brick and mortar kind of
brick and mortar
stuff,
companies. Whether it's, for example, like Kenya Breweries or Unilever. If you walk into Kenya Breweries plant, you'll be shocked that there's actually nobody within the plant.
The computers are better. They can measure temperature.
But
they don't watch Netflix.
I'm looking at it in all aspects.
They don't go to watch football. The computers are working. The machines are there.
The machines, they don't strike.
They don't strike.
They don't go to watch football.
If you switch them off, maybe. But to the extent that,
remember AFCON KBC.
The computers can't watch that, so you really have to go watch AFCON. Yes,
but we are looking at the one view of technology that really can be disturbing in one sense here. Can it be viewed as a disadvantage of technology? Because here we are having now the human being replaced by the computer. Can we be able to harness this in a way that it brings more in terms of profit for the continent, for the country, so that we do not end up having like a scenario that technology, for example, in driverless vehicles, we are having someone who is looking for a job to be a driver, but now there's a vehicle that comes and replaces this job.
Guess what? Even typing. I'm sorry to say this. Even typing is going.
I think I want to be a bit contextual here, and I want Philip to help us get this home. And I want to be a bit contextual, especially to people in the rural areas.
Yes.
And I want Philip to probably explain to us how weather data,
Yes,
affects, and having access to weather data changes lives of a farmer in Vihiga constituency, and practically from what is happening from NASA, and this is NASA, National Agency for Space, but not NASA.
Not NASA.
Yes, exactly. That's not a political party.
But here the farmer now has the ability.
So think about it.
On the phone.
Sure, exactly.
So 10 years ago, right? So an agency like US NASA was basically everybody thought about literally rocket science, right? So NASA and a group of organizations, and this is something that I think we have to credit His Excellency the Deputy President, that he sort of was a champion on data revolution. And so through his leadership, we've opened up almost all satellites, right? And right now you have innovators who are working with the county governor of Vihiga to access weather data and other Earth observations data to enhance farming. Right? Farming weather data is not the same as you and me that we watch on Yahoo and Google and take an umbrella. They require very precise or very predictive, very precise weather information. And so what those farmers with the county are doing across other value chains is one, and talk about a value chain approach, right? Is one, weather data will determine whether or not, when you'll plant. We know because of climate, seasons have changed.
Yes.
Right? Planting season keep on moving. It's an accordion. So think about that. That determines everything. Insurers are able to sort of plan better around risk. Banks are able to give better loans because now at least they understand the weather patterns based on satellite information. And so for me, I think that is as practical as it gets. Technology that was previously inaccessible, because of this revolution, innovators being able to bring it down to a phone like this, as I mentioned, and the space analogy I think is appropriate. Your phone is 20 times more powerful than the computer that managed the Apollo mission. Right? That literally sent that satellite to the moon. So it tells you what capability, of course it's smaller. That was probably the size of 2 buildings. But faster processing, more data, the experience is better. And so I think for me, we have all the capabilities and tools to do this. And when you say issues or challenges of technology, of course they are. We can be rosy around, but any tool has a dark side. And so I think for us knowledge and education is always the best protector for this, is how do we ensure that we protect data in a way that doesn't compromise on security? How do we ensure that the integrity of data is in such a way that doesn't compromise farmer incomes? Right? So you don't want somebody providing fake weather data, right? You really want to guide farmers into a process where it doesn't do that. I think we need more people in that space.
And here we need also to give recognition to facts that when you go online, they will always be real and fake.
Obviously,
exactly.
That is true.
Exactly.
Yes, that is true.
And it's going to be important. That's why I think we talk about co-creation, because triangulation is going to be the future. We have to triangulate data now, right? So you have to tell me your source, my source, we triangulate, and that's what will save us. So this idea that I have my little data and I'm staying in my corner would basically work against you, because maybe the process of getting your data was wrong. Therefore, you're working on fake assumptions.
At Dennis Kipkoech is asking, why are we, now he's putting all the we's that I read are in quote. Why are we talking about the 4th Industrial Revolution while we stopped when we invented the stick? I don't know.
Who invented a stick?
Okay. I believe I'm not too sure what he's saying, but I know that there's a stick. I know there's a friend to the stick that reads Braille, the one that has been the new.
Oh, the pen.
I think there's a Kenyan who actually has who's actually developed a Braille stick that actually reads and actually talks to people. So I don't know whether he's referring to that.
I don't know. I'm not sure. Maybe Dennis, you can also clarify that. But just commenting on this generally.
Yes.
And there's no stopping, right? I think for me, it's as you said, there's no start or stop. And I think we're debating whether it's a future of work or work of the future. This revolution, that's why it's a revolution.
And by the way, should it be the future of work or the work of the future?
I think we can. I think there are a lot of schools of thought on this. I think in my sense, it's the work of the future, because the future is here. I mean, we were talking about AI, machine learning now.
How would you differentiate between the two?
future of work is we're thinking about, we are seeing like the future is there, right? But you see, work of the future, we're already defining how work will be in the future. So it's giving us an opportunity of how we curate it, how we harness it. And for me, it's all the ecosystems, right? Because, and this is part of this conversation. I think we are here, even including the media. I think you have to be part of this conversation to the extent of how it's disrupting how you're sharing
information. In fact, it's
information.
interesting you say that because now there's lots of people who are their own media houses. You know, on Instagram,
Not
on
all
YouTube.
of them are
and
physically.
yes, and I mean, and that again shows you to the power of, of what the future of work is and how that has totally disrupted, the way we engage. In fact, it's interesting. A lot of people actually watching this program are right now on their phone and at the same time watching us. That's a very typical thing. So I think it's a great place to be, as a country and as a people. And it's just for us to purposefully think it out and to decide how and what it is that we must do, and especially with our forgotten bottom millions who live out of the urban centers.
What skills do you think, in terms of IT, do we need to invest in the future?
My sense from this, honestly, technology skills, and a lot of those will be automated.
Yes.
Right. So coding right now is being quickly. Very few people will code. Machines will do most of it. The skills that, interestingly, that we'll need will be the soft skills.
Soft skills.
Soft skills.
Because now you're wondering whether IT departments will shrink when companies move to the cloud.
That could be one of it. Well, where's the cloud, right? The cloud is still a physical location, right? So again, it will simply be less people handling the servers because you'll have a lot of automation, something saying the server downtime, this and that happening. But I think for me, the sense, think about soft skills. Michael has just mentioned that you will not necessarily be commuting to work.
Yes.
Right? Chances are that perhaps in the next couple of years, this interview would have happened very differently. Right?
Hopefully.
It would have happened very
I pray that I be part of that.
It will have basically been, and we've seen where news anchors have been AI.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So because it's a script, the AI simply reads it, and so Aguko doesn't have a job. But but to the extent that also that is happening, right? But it doesn't mean that other jobs will not. Somebody still has to prepare the script. Somebody still has to read it. Somebody still has to train the machine to understand this. Maintenance. You talked about driverless jobs. You still need somebody. In fact, you need more vigilance on the roads because of the driverless, carless, the driverless jobs. You need engineers for that. Technology will evolve. You need people who can fix it. So the manual jobs that you think are not useful right now are going to be quite beneficial.
And your point concerning the skills that we need to harness in the future here, looking at Africa, in the global perspective.
So already, one of the great things that we have, which everybody else does not have, is that we've got many problems, which means that already we think differently. We're solution providers. I think that's one of the greatest skills that we have, and that's why everybody's so attracted to us in this country, as a continent and as a people. And then, of course, the other skills that Philip has also mentioned, the soft skills that we need to add on. But our educational institutions must disrupt, and they must change. Unfortunately, and this is, when I speak about this, I'm also speaking about educational institutions. I mean, if we want to take our place in the global place, if we want to outpace the UK, the Asian countries and everything else, then we must start looking at things differently.
From the education system?
From our education system.
Moving, we have the debate 844 now, 2663.
Yes, so for me it's actually the content of what it is that's being taught. And the TVETs, as Philip had mentioned earlier on, I think that's where our big secret lies. And that is where the big game changer is going to be for this country. So with absolutely no disrespect to those who are currently in campus, or those who are going to university, or those who have enrolled, or those who are teaching there, but the TVET, and the TVET people who are watching this, you hold the key and the brains and the economy to this country. You're really at a great place because first and foremost, a lot of the students that you have with yourselves, thankfully, are not tainted like ourselves here with the degrees, so already very inclined on our one-track mind of thinking. They are more open
for new ideas.
And you must help them nurture those new ideas, because that's where the new M-Pesas, the new Facebooks, and the new Googles are going to come from.
Look at China.
Yes.
In the way their education system is. You know, they have the use of technology from, you know, the tender age. And I'm aware, you know, the president has been trying to, you know, enforce and put ICT in education. We had the laptops, you know, primary, which brought in a lot of debate.
Yes, yeah.
We had in a lot of, you know, the ICT coming in to move from, you know, one sector to the other. How does that place the country so far, comparing us and in countries like China and the way they are having robotics?
Okay, so first and foremost, I think from the government side, we may also have too many institutions, and so there's a lot of overlapping, so nothing really gets done. I think the intentions are good, but then, you know, we need to relook at that and streamline that. The government's intentions were very clear and very good and very noble in terms of ensuring that from the ECD level, you know, we got people understanding what ICT skills were. And I think in as much as that needs to be continued, I think these are some of the big opportunities for anybody who's watching, who as a private person, you know, you can already take up some of these gaps of what it is that are not being provided by the current curriculum, and create opportunities for yourselves or for ourselves in terms of creating and providing the skills, because parent and education in this country is such a key thing. I mean, we're so passionate about education in this country, and if you tell any parent, or if you tell anybody who's providing education that you're bringing in new skills that will actually prepare our students or our people for the future of work, and you can actually connect that to, it's a non-brainer. I think this is something which we'll all easily embrace and take up.
And it brings into, you know, perspective here now, where should we invest in here? Because here we have private investors and their input towards taking development, taking ICT to the next level, and we have government input. How far are we in terms of investment, looking at the public sector? I'm aware of this coming Sunday you will be speaking at with the Minister of Public Service.
The Ministers of Public Service.
Yes.
So the African Union, for example, is already thinking about the fourth industrial revolution and how it will disrupt public service. Because you can't have, and this is an analogy I always use, you can't have government offices having suggestion boxes. And the young people are on Twitter and Facebook, you know what I mean? So
we need to move out of that.
We need to invest also in technologies within the public sector, right? So for me, that's the first investment, right? Invest in the public sector, so that public servants on how they provide services are also IT savvy, fourth industrial revolution ready. I think for me that's important for public services. The second bit was private sector. Private sector are the job creators. Unfortunately, not even our private sector are future ready.
We're not.
They're not.
Disappointingly.
It's simply, again, a mindset.
It's like
right?
a setback.
It's a mindset. So you push people to MBAs, you know, so it's the same traditional way of how we look at how we acquire knowledge. A lot of this, Babusi, for instance, you know, he's running his own company. He'll go understand the trends of how technology is changing, quickly acquire that knowledge, adapt it quickly in his company. Even our private sector needs to be that agile at the same time, to understand that how do they have skills in industry that first of all increases productivity. Because if you increase productivity, it's more revenues, you create more jobs. I think for me that's just how this works. And that's what technology does. The rigidity of this 8 to 5, and I'm looking at a lot of, and interesting enough is, and Michael mentioned this, there are 19 hubs, 19 innovation hubs out of Nairobi. We even didn't know this. So it means there's already vibrancy out there. So how do private sector invest in those hubs and look at the innovations that are coming out of there? Guess what? Somebody from the US is doing it.
And we are losing the jobs. We are losing
they're taking the patents. They're taking the patents, they're taking equity. Somebody sitting out there, guess what? Silicon Valley. And I'm not taking, and this is the interesting thing about Kenyans. If you look at who is investing in these hubs, it's not anybody, right? So my sense is also is that how is our private sector valorizing our innovators, and because they have context, they're all registered here. It's better return on investment and value on how they understand portfolios or acquisitions.
But look at Konza City. You know, it has taken so many years. To some point, many people believe that it's dead. that it's actually never, it's a dream that will never happen. What is your take concerning this? We have, Tatu City. The country is trying to do something, but it's taking so long, taking into consideration Vision 2030.
So one of the things that, I always say, I think the government should stay in the business of government and not get in the business of business, and should get an enabling place. So I know that the current setup of Konza is that it's a place that will actually end up being not just one geographical location, but it will interact with a lot of other satellites, so-called satellite centers from across the country, in terms of ensuring that when we talk about emerging technologies, as a country, we almost like have a focal point that we can make a reference to in terms of correlating and in terms of co-creation and moving us forward. But just to come into this, and just so that people can understand, why would we spend an hour speaking about emerging technologies and about all these things? And let me put it into context. Donald Trump, the US president, war with China, and specifically with a company called Huawei. Yes, is over $500 billion. That is what is at stake. And, because we will not have time to really explain this in detail, and those of you who are internet savvy, I will probably encourage you just to go online and just to Google Trevor Noah, Trump, China, war, and you'll get to understand what really the battle is. The battle here is about money, it's about the economy, and it's about trade and who gets
power.
Of course, and power.
It's a future.
Yes, it's a future.
It's a future.
Yes, and Trump is very much alive to that. And that is why he's insisted that, it is unfortunate that, he's being typically Trump, he's put his leg there and he's stripped the players on the field.
Himself.
Yes, he's just being himself. But that tells you what is at stake and what is at play. So remember earlier on I'd mentioned that we've got 9,000 kilometers of fiber that has been laid. But the big question is this: what are those county governments doing with that fiber within those localities? But beyond that also, what are private businesses within those counties also doing around that? So, young people, businesses who are listening to us this morning, I think rethink what it is that you're thinking about in terms of investing in business. We're always very open in terms of informing what happens or what to do next. We have a platform called majadiliano.com where you can actually go to and you can actually reference to us from, because we're very clear that for us, this country and Kenya, we cannot lose our place in terms of being the global place within this continent that takes the lead within the emerging technologies field. Yes.
That's right, and I would like you to be part of this conversation. Remember, the hashtag is Good Morning Kenya. As we bring this conversation to a close here, maybe just general comments here concerning how your take is on the country of Kenya and Africa at large here. We have tech wars that have been going on, one company and the other, and at some point, some Kenyans, we may not all understand that there is something that is actually going on within the technological world. Now, here we have the aspect, and I'd like you to give, as you give your final remarks here, do we as Kenyans, as Africans, really understand what we have? How can we be able to, get to know that this thing that is actually happening is the future of us as a continent? Number two, is it possible for us as a continent to be rebranded, from being called third world to the next level, using technology as the spearhead?
Okay. So first of all, I'm very happy that as the median age of Kenyans, that is from the 19-year-olds, yes, we do understand what it is that this technology means and how it can change our lives. I think you can see from the rapid uptake of how these young people use their phones and the technologies that they have around them. But we need to now ensure that they're using them within the right space. When I say the right space, within the right environments, that returns an income back to them. I'm also very happy that there's actually a lot of local Kenyans who have set up local institutions to run and to ensure that the next generation is actually getting the proper training. I'll mention some schools. There's a school called Ubunifu, which is situated in Kileleshwa. There's another one called Fun Trench, which is in Westlands. There's another one called Zook Academy. And of course, Thunderbird is now coming in to work and ensure that the global best practices are inputted into some of the things that we're doing. So we do have a good understanding of where it is that we need to go. I think that is good when you speak to people in the median age. But sadly enough, I need to call out this: the county governments have failed us. All the 47 county governments, there's not a single county government that has a standalone docket that looks at ICT, and this is the major creator of new jobs and the major enabler for efficiencies within the running of public service.
Regardless of cases like Konza City.
Yeah, I mean, but you see, that is national government. But then the closest unit of governance and of service to anybody, whether in Wajir, whether in Lamu, whether in Kapenguria, is your county government. So I think they're not doing enough, and they must do far much more so that the citizens and us as taxpayers can be able to get into the new jobs. And let's not pretend, and let's not cheat ourselves. A lot of these young people who are actually within your counties are interested in jobs within the space of the future of work, not those jobs which you're trying to push them towards. If they're going to do agricultural jobs, they want to do it in a new way. They want to be able to ensure that they probably want to be part of the value chain in terms of either the supply or in terms of either adding more value to the produce that's coming from the farms. So we need to rethink, relook how we are engaging and what it is that we're doing as governments in terms of ensuring that we're actually working to the needs and the expectations and to what is happening globally around the future of work.
Now the question is, how many years do we need for us to achieve that?
I think my take is, and as I said,
and also as you wrap it up, we have the issues of being called a third world country.
Okay.
Can we move out from that pride?
Again, we didn't call ourselves third world. Somebody called us third world, and that's the problem with Africa, right? We never tell our story. Somebody tells our story, and I think for me, we need to do this more, of talking about our story and telling the world where we are. If everybody, they call us third world, yet everybody comes and invests and puts their headquarters or their regional offices in Nairobi. So that should tell you something. And I think for me, it's more or less, again, I'll tie it across towards a mindset issue. You can call me third world, but I don't have to ascribe to the third world definition. Right. So the thing I'm asking Kenyans and Africans is, you're not third world, especially in this revolution. We are first world. It has to be in the mind first. You are what you think you are. So I think for me, and that's why we're here. I mean, some of us, and Mike will tell you, everywhere we go to speak globally, there's a Kenyan on the podium talking about this issue.
Everywhere
there's a Kenyan on the podium.
Yes.
There's a Kenyan on the podium, an expert on this issue.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. I think that's a very good place to end this conversation, but tech always continues. Remember, we also have a program run by the one and the only, amongst many people, we have Jane Wamboi, who is, on tech. All right. So this conversation continues. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming and joining me. We put matters, technology into perspective, and I appreciate it. And let's hope for the best.
Thank you for having us here. Thank you very much.
And that's a good place to end this conversation. They say that in every global fora, there is a Kenyan who will be seen there. All right, it has been a pleasure having you. That brings us to the end of this morning show. Good morning, Kenya. See you again tomorrow morning for another show from 6 all the way through to 10. My name is Ram Aguko. Tag us on Twitter at Jane Wamboi, at Ray Manyara. Official handle is at KBC Television. The hashtag is Good Morning Kenya. May God bless you. May God bless the work of your hands. Have a blessed day.